Marc Guehi has been linked with Newcastle. We believe that the talks have opened with the Palace centre-back as well. I mean, as a Newcastle fan, I was delighted to see that news. I very much hope that comes through. He had a fantastic Euros. I think he was England's best player out in Germany.
Yeah, I agree.
As well. He's very highly rated, of course. You'll have seen a lot of him for your former club, Crystal Palace, as well. Are you surprised that it is Newcastle potentially that are going to get Guehi, because obviously he's linked with all sorts of other clubs as well?
If they do get him,
if they do,
it has to be said, yeah, because we don't know the situation. I know Crystal Palace will not want to lose Marc Guehi. Absolutely, he's got a great partnership with Joachim Andersen at the back as well. They've got Chris Richards as well. They've been playing like a three. Nathaniel Klein's been playing back in the three as well. So they do. And
Richards has really come on as well.
Really has, and maybe
well.
That's partly a reason that they could be entering discussions, and partly the reason is the fee. We're led to believe, as Alex Crook said earlier, it's north of 60 million. I think it's closer to 70 million. And you get a lot of people saying, well, he's not worth that. You go on social media and you see he's bid for 70 million, and there's some of the response, he's not worth that, he's not worth that. Come on, he's worth what the club value at the time. To replace Marc Guehi with a similar outstanding footballer, they want 70 million, and that will give them a similar player plus some money. If they value him, if he's important to their football club, they can put £200 million on him. It doesn't matter. If someone wants to pay 60, 70 million for Marc Guehi, or if they're desperate for Marc Guehi, they have to pay what Crystal Palace want, because Crystal Palace own this player. I don't understand how people can't get to grips with this.
Well, of course they can negotiate.
They can negotiate.
But it's probably going to end up being close to the valuation of the club.
It's going to be, yeah, exactly. It's going to be, if Newcastle are going with 30, Palace wants 70, you're looking 60 to 65. It's going to be closer to the Palace value than it is the Newcastle value.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Everyone's going to want to say that, but people can't seem to grasp it. He's a fantastic player. I've watched him a lot, as I said. He does have this great partnership. He's not the biggest for a centre-half, but he's really competitive in the air. He rarely loses a header. We've seen he got a lot of unnecessary criticism before the tournament started, Euros, saying, we can't be playing him at centre-half alongside John Stones.
I think a bit of that, to be fair, a bit of that was to do with the lack of game time he'd had in the lead-up to the tournament. He had been injured.
And the two games he had played with John Stones, they'd lost as well.
Yeah, so, and he'd struggled a bit. And then he got to the biggest stage. He got to the actual Euros, and as we've said, he was the best player. Look, I think it would be a very, very good signing for Newcastle for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think when you look at the centre-backs at the moment, Sven Botman has still got that ACL injury, and I think with him, the issue was last season that he was rushed back, and then that then led to this really serious injury that has put him out for a bit of time. You've got Fabian Schär, who I do think is a very good player, but he is, north of 30, and actually, I don't know if he'll have the legs in him, given how much football he played last season, to do another full-on season at the back for Newcastle. Jamal Lascelles is still at the club, but again, similar to Botman, he's got, the ACL issue.
And then Dan Burn, is he staying?
Well,
not is he staying? I know you're not involved in Newcastle, but you've got Livramento, you've got Lewis Hall. Do you think it's the time that he does move on?
It is starting to feel like that, I think. And I do love Trippier. He was that first big signing, wasn't he? For Newcastle. And
good
he's done
servant
so much for the club.
Leader.
So much for the club. He was so key in that season where we managed to qualify for the Champions League. He did struggle last season. And I think it's the point you've just made there. They've got Livramento waiting in the wings to come in and do a fantastic job. He's been so impressive since he's come in as well. And so I think if you asked most Newcastle fans right now, at the start of the season in that first game against Southampton, what the back four they'd want to see is, let's include Guehi, why not? They'd probably want to say Livramento at right back and Lewis Hall at left back, who by the end of the season his performances had been superb as well. And then in that centre back position, look, if they got Guehi over the line, of course he would start.
Who next to him?
But then Botman, when he comes back, of course, I would say, if not Fabian Schär.
Would that be a concern, being a Newcastle supporter? And I'm not saying, but fantastic defenders, all of them, but you rightly said Livramento didn't get many opportunities. Lewis Hall did towards the end of last season. Guehi will come in, if he does come in, let's argument's sake he does come in. towards the back end, closer to the season. So
by the way,
back four
don't
not
forget
played
Lloyd
together.
Kelly. Don't forget Lloyd Kelly.
Lloyd Kelly, yes,
as a new signing.
But that back four, very new, whole new look, really.
It is, but actually, if you look at a lot of last season, it's funny because when you look at the season where they did get into the Champions League, that was a back four that pretty much played every single game. When that was with Dan Burn at left back as well, and then Botman and Cher, and then Trippier on the right. And I do agree with you that consistency for a back four is crucial, really, isn't it? If you want to build up, good consistency. And actually, we saw that in a few games last season. I think particularly that Arsenal game at the Emirates, you might remember it, Newcastle got torn apart. And it was because Botman had been rushed back, and it was a very makeshift defence. So I do agree that consistency would be key, but I think that they could build that consistency with a new back four. I think those players are talented enough to go in there and know each other's games well enough. And actually, Livramento did play a lot of games last season, and his calmness, his ability to enter those kind of situations, I do think he is a terrific player.
How important then is, I know we go back to him, but Kieran Trippier, I know for him as a footballer, if I look at how I would have reacted, I would want to go and play football. Towards the back end of your career, you want to play as many games. But for Newcastle, with this young, potential new look defence, how important would it be to have the experience of him just to guide them through? I know he's not a coach, I know this, but
do you know what? I think you can't underestimate how important he is to the dressing room. I think his character has been a huge part of this success. He came into the club when they were fighting relegation. He just won La Liga at Atletico Madrid. He'd played under Simeone. He'd had this mentality shift. And there's so many brilliant stories about Trippier. Things like before games, getting them in huddles before huge matches and reminding the players that pressure is a privilege. Making sure that they had that winning mindset. And I'm sure that was something that pushed them on. So in that sense, I think it would be a miss in terms of having the character around the dressing room. But you've made the point there that if Trippier wants to play consistently, I'm not sure that next season at Newcastle is a cert at the moment.
I just want to quickly, I know we're going to go to the break, so I just want to quickly touch on Marc Guehi signing Eddie Howe, because look, we know the links with England and Eddie Howe. We know he's committed himself to Newcastle to a certain extent. But do you think for a football player like Marc Guehi, is he going to look at that situation and say, well, I don't actually know if you are going to be there or not, so why would I sign? Would you not wait a little while?
Firstly, I don't think that the situation with Eddie Howe at the moment looks like he'll be going out the door. I think Eddie Howe's also had quite a strong summer in just letting the club know what his ambitions are and what he is expecting from them. Obviously, there were the links with England, but he's come out and said, listen, he's fully committed to Newcastle as well. I think it is a defining season for Eddie Howe, but that's not something that I would have at the forefront of my mind if I was Marc Guehi. And actually, Darren, let's be honest, were Eddie Howe to move on, which as a fan, I don't want to happen, especially at the moment, as I've just said, but Newcastle would be looking for their next manager as one that is best in class. Yeah. So actually, is it too much of a problem? Would you be too worried about Eddie Howe going? I'm not too sure that you would as well. How do you see Newcastle getting on this season, just quickly? Because they missed out on getting into European football, which was a real shame at the end of last season, even though they finished 7th. Man City messed that up for us in the FA Cup. Never forgiving Man City for that. No. But how do you see them getting on this season without that European competition? Not as a distraction, but as adding to their calendar.
Look, I think it's disappointing, but it could be a blessing in disguise not having no European football this season, because they haven't got to concentrate on that. You've seen the last 2 seasons, and we've spoken about this before, they're kind of in reverse. You'd have expected last season to be the season before, and then last season they'd get to the Champions League. So flip the seasons. That's what the supporters would have expected. To get Champions League in that a couple of seasons ago was a miracle, let's be honest, with the teams. I think they'll do better this season, I do. Do I think they'll creep into the top 4 again? Probably not. They'll be a lot closer, and I think you've got Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool. I'm still adding to that will be in the top 4, and I think they'll be one of the 3 or 4 teams that are fighting for that last space.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.